Hello, everyone. We have a new author today joining us. His name is Kingsley Pearson. Kingsley lives in London and he's a clinical psychologist. And his latest book has come. It's called The Flat 401. And I'm really excited to talk to him about his writing process, about this book. And as you all know, this is really a great chance for all of us to understand what really goes behind those books that you see on the bookshelves and the libraries and on your desk. So, welcome, Kinsley. I'm really excited to speak to you. Thanks for taking out time on a Saturday. And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Priyanka. Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, I love talking about writing and connecting with other writers. So yeah, great to be here.
Yes, so we all know, or we often say that writing is a very lonely profession. Your battle, your hand-to-hand combat is always with the page and the pen or your keyboards or whatever. But sometimes when we get this chance to speak to a fellow author, we always like to know how did this start? How did this writing bug bite you? Because you are still in a full-time job, you are a clinical psychologist and I'm sure it must be a complete new journey for you just to learn this craft. So tell us how it started for you.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a good way of putting it. Definitely, I did get bitten by the bug because when I started out, I didn't plan on writing a novel or getting published and then having more and more ideas for books. But what happened was during the pandemic, I was working remotely. Work was quite kind of repetitive in a way. Obviously, I didn't have as many outlets outside of work. So I needed a creative outlet. And then I started listening to a podcast called 100-Day Writing Challenge. So it's a free podcast. And as you might guess from the title, each day it's like a different writing task. And I just decided to do that as an outlet, a creative outlet. I needed something a bit different. And then, as you indicated, once I started doing those exercises, then the bug got me, and I had, it made me come up with ideas for a book. I then started writing that book, and then once I'd got onto that, then I wanted to actually finish it and get it out there into the world.
So this was 2020, you said, like the
I
COVID
think I think
period.
it was like I think it was like end of 2020. I sort of the summer autumn. I started listening to the podcast. I didn't finish it in 100 days. I wasn't listening to it every day. So I think it was around then the start of 2021 when then I moved from that to starting to write the actual book. Yeah.
So then tell us, how did the actual book happen? Where did the idea come from? Or maybe you can also talk about what is the book about. And I have started to read it on Kindle, and I'm getting a little excited to know what's happening to Jay. But tell us more about the book, the main plot, the way you have thought, and how did that idea come from you? Because sometimes it's very interesting, like how some mundane things could give you an idea and then it can like expand or explode into an entire book. Sometimes it also expands into a series. So
Mm.
how did that happen for you? How did that germ of an idea came to you?
Yeah, I think I'll try not to spoilerize it for you or any of the other viewers. I'll start with what it's about and then show how the experience kind of mapped onto that. So it's about a man who was in prison for a crime he confessed to but didn't commit, and then when he's out of prison, he's blackmailed over the crime he actually committed. Um, yes, that's all. Yes, that's all I'll say in detail at the moment. In terms of the background, how it came to be was, um, as I've said, I started writing during the pandemic, and I was aware of how I knew how long it would take if I finished a book and got it published. I knew how long it would take to get it on the shelves because, as you might know, there's often a lag in you have to write, you have to get an agent. That can take a long time. I mean, we'll probably talk a bit more about that later. That can take a while. Then you get a publisher. That can take a while. And then with the publisher, even once they bought the book, can be like at least a year or more before it actually hits the shelves. So
Yeah.
I knew, okay, if I write this book, it's going to be ages before it's out there. So I was at that point, I was assuming and hoping, the pandemic will be over. So I was thinking as a psychologist, what will it be like? What will it be like for us? How will we feel when the pandemic's over? And I thought of I imagined, not to be kind of glib about what it's like to actually be in prison, but I thought, oh, it will feel like we're being released from a prison. That's
Okay.
what we'll be regaining some of the freedoms that we've lost. So that's where the start of the idea of, about writing a story about someone who was in prison came from, and then big on the outside. And then the other part of it is, obviously, again, during lockdown, I was in my flat a lot. So I'm looking at my small London flat, looking out of the window. And that's where an idea from, okay, someone sees like a crime through a window. But they can't investigate because it's COVID. That was the initial idea. I then chose not to write about COVID time itself because I thought people wouldn't want to necessarily read about that so much. Although you do have some authors who've made a success of books set in the pandemic, like Catherine Ryan Howard's 56 Days is it's another crime thriller, really great one set in Ireland during lockdown. And those two things came together to be like, okay, it's about a man who was in prison, and this is the crime that actually happened. And then the plot kind of goes from there when you're working out, okay, so Jay's the protagonist. These are certain things about him. Then the story necessarily follows from that. And then also who's the antagonist, given the nature of the crime. So that's how it came into to start off as the seed of the idea that gradually grew.
It's interesting, like how you say, like there is also a story that you see on the pages, and there is also a deeper motivation for an author, or a deeper emotion or a feeling that that author had gone through while writing that book. Because I feel when you're writing, a lot of your characters, a lot of the situations that you create also comes from your own experience and your own deeper understanding of situations and life as it comes. So it's interesting, just this whole metaphor of being locked in a flat versus how a criminal would feel being locked in a prison, for example, and how this can interplay. So that's pretty interesting, I would say. So tell us, Kinsley, a little bit more about what happened next. Like, how did the editing process go? Because I'm sure when you wrote, things would have just flown out of you. But after that, when you look at it and you are like, okay, now the real task begins. And I was reading through some of your blogs where you also mentioned that that is when you realize that, okay, now I have to invest a lot of time and effort in actually working on this whole material for it to be ready for a finished product, or for you to kind of take it to the next stage. So tell us a little bit more about your editing process. Very almost like giving up on this book.
No, I really like the editing process. I guess I would say is that as well as editing, like I really invested in learning how to write as as well. So read a lot of books about craft, so focusing on the different competencies like character, pacing, plot, structure, things like that. Uh, Prose as well, like how to, change the words and the sentence structures to have the impact on the mind of the reader that you want it to. Um, Wrote the first draft, but then, yes, as you said, then I came to realizing, oh, actually, editing is a whole stage. I mean, it takes as much, if not longer, than the original writing phase. Some people do it differently. So some authors I know, they won't move on from a chapter until they finish editing it. But for me, that doesn't work because I need to have the whole story down, the outline and the skeleton of the story before you need to move the bits around and then edit it. Um, yeah, so in
You
terms of
enjoyed the process. That's something new that I'm hearing from an author, because I always feel like writing is such a creative process where you are like going all out there, putting your heart out. So a lot of times things are also inconsistent when you're just writing, when you're just writing with the flow. But then editing is like you have to be really sharp at it. You have to really look at your work objectively. And I think the biggest challenge is to letting go of your darlings, no? Like things that are not
Mhm.
working, just letting go of those pages. And I mean, that's something that I felt, but it is good to know that. But then what I'm getting here is maybe the learning craft really helps. So tell us what kind of, or let's say how long you can go on understanding the theoretical aspects of writing before you actually write. And a lot of people just learn from reading a lot of books. So how did that work for you? Like what helped you the most to improve?
I think that's a really important point to highlight that, yeah, we do, as writers, obviously, will have been reading a lot. Mostly for us, mostly since our childhood, most writers will say they're always keen readers. So that I think that gives you an intuitive sense of how to write a character or structure. But then for me, I'm quite systematic. People are different, but I definitely approached it with reading craft books to help me then understand a little bit more consciously how to, for example, write character. I think that in terms of though how long, I think actually I don't think it's a process that ends. I think you've got to keep learning, but then on the other hand, don't just keep reading about writing and not actually do any writing. I think you've got to do both. So I think the sooner you can start putting words on the page, it doesn't have to be as part of whatever the book you're planning is. It can be just kind of an exercise, or maybe you're interviewing a character. Maybe you're just writing a list of like different possible settings that could be for the book. But I think it's good to get to writing something as soon as possible, but whilst also alongside that, doing things that help you learn. And for me, it was a mixture of different craft books. So I have got some of my recommendations on my blog, so there's more on there. But from the top of my head, like some of the best ones, if I were to recommend one, it would be David Corbett's The Art of Character, because I think character is central to stories. People, readers care about characters, and also although most people want like a plot, want something to happen. The plot, the actions, they make most sense if they flow from the character rather than it's just a thing that happen and the character's 2D and is there. And I think his book really covers all of that. But there's other ones about kind of active setting, pacing. Turn and look at the shelf for other kind of, there's a great one about we talked about editing, so intuitive editing by Tiffany Yates Martin. That's a really good one because again it's editing, so it covers a broad range of the competencies, so you can also use it to help write, not just at the editing stage. And there's lots of different books, different styles, so different things are going to work for different people. But what I also found helpful was different classes. So courses thanks to the pandemic, a lot moved online. So through ones like Curtis Brown Creative, Faber Academy, which are UK based, but I've also done some with Gotham writers who are in New York. And because they're asynchronous,
Yes.
you can do ones in a completely different time zone. So normally the way they work is there's pre-recorded materials you watch to learn from. Then you do an exercise which you put onto a forum. Other students and the tutor will comment on that, but as I say, at a different time. So you can really work through it when it works for you. So that also helps with fitting it around work, life, caring responsibilities. And I find that the additional aspect of that that's helpful is that you get feedback. And there's accountability as well. But I think for me, the main thing was feedback, that people are actually reading your work, because that's also an important part of the writing process as a psychologist is you don't just do a thing, you also reflect on it and learn like, okay, what would I do differently? How could I grow? So that's the sort of process for me.
I'll ask you a very basic question. Do you ever think, or did you plan or expect that your writing would one day make you some money? Because I feel that people who write or have it as a career in the start of their career, let's say, would still be at a stage when they can expect it to make money. But for people who start late and they are learning it and then they are doing it with a job of their own, because it's always so hard. And nowadays it's just getting harder and harder. Like, I don't want to sound pessimistic here, but with AI and so much of digital writing, do you really feel that authors can have a full-time income from their writing, or how do you see it? Because these courses that you're mentioning, all these things, they cost a lot of money. So it's like really someone has to be motivated and interested to invest on themselves and their craft with an expectation that maybe this will never see the light of the day and it will never make us the money that money and the time that we are currently investing. So are you an author who is doing it for the love of the craft, or is it something that you see as becoming more financially rewarding as well? I mean, I don't have a better way to put that question, sorry.
Mhm. I think it's evolved. No, I think it's a good and important topic. I think it's evolved over time for me. Yeah, I'm really fortunate to working as a clinical psychologist and not having any dependents to have been able to finance courses. Short courses are not too. So I haven't done any of the like long courses, like 6 or 9 months. The ones I've done are more like 4 to 12 weeks.
Mhm.
So those are more affordable. But you can even have some even more affordable courses like masterclass.com where you have like a whole year subscription. Or if you don't want to spend the money on it, there's loads of free podcasts and blogs and things with writing tips. So yeah, I wouldn't want people to be put off from thinking they don't have the money, that there are ways to access that. But as you said, even if you're not putting the money in, you're putting the time in and what's your end goal. I think that's changed for me over time. So at the beginning, I'm happy, I'm not too proud to admit I was a bit naive and I thought, yep, I'm going to send this to agents. I'm going to get an agent very quickly. And then they're going to get me a 6-figure advance. And I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to become a full-time author and live this glamorous lifestyle because that's what you see in particularly in the book press. So I get the bookseller magazine. I subscribe to that. You don't need to subscribe to it to see some of their rights announcements and things like that, but it's helpful to. I've found it helpful to get it to see what agents were representing what kind of book because that helped me get an agent. But the downside of getting it is that what they promote, what you see there is, yeah, this person snapped up in 6-way auction, and of course that's the minority of authors. But I'll admit, at the beginning I thought, I too will become one of
This
those
sets an
people.
expectation, no? This sets some kind of an expectation when you're starting out, and you do see that as a end goal. So,
Yeah. So I think it's understandable, but as I've had more contact with the reality of publishing, then and as you said, also that has changed. I think even in the last few years, I think we have seen. I think the real golden age for in terms of like selling commercial crime fiction was the early 2010s. If you think about Girl on Train, Gone Girl, obviously those were sold a lot of copies. You don't really see that volume of sales now even for celebrities actually. So yes, Richard Osman sells a lot of copies, but even he's like maybe the outlier who's comparable to someone like
mm,
Gillian Flynn, Gone
correct.
Girl. Now, yeah, much more modest expectations. There are still people who now are able to make become full-time authors and make a living from it. Something that people like in the UK, people like Jenny Godfrey or Samuel Burr. But again,
Whiskey,
theirs were,
for example, yeah.
yeah, so those are the exceptions, though. I think that for most of us, and this is something I'm kind of learning, is yeah, it's about trying to find a lifestyle where you can have work and life and writing can fit into it to be able to make. I think it is realistic for people to try to make some money.
Mhm.
But for me personally, I think it would be quite difficult to make a full-time income, certainly to the level working in the UK National Health Service. I'm not that well paid. I'm not, an investment banker or something, but it is a professional job. It's well paid. So
Mm.
it's easier for me to make more money in that than it is in writing, definitely. But also, publishing, being a published author has a lot of ups and downs. So for me, it's also mentally healthy to have something else in my life, to still have the day job. So I'm not fully invested in and not spending all my time on writing. Because the publishing experience, there can be a lot of like quiet periods where the
Yes,
publisher's doing stuff, but you're not. So then if you're anxiously just
true.
sitting there checking your email, waiting to hear something, that's not good for anybody. So I think it's good. I think it's good to have other things in your life as well as from the financial side
Correct.
as a
It's
writer.
also the volume, no? Like if you want to be a full-time writer, you have to kind of write books every year, and it's also the volume of words that needs to come out of you. And sometimes it's not there. Like uh, I don't know, even if you are like doing it full time, sometimes it could be hard to just make sure that you have a book out every year and is something that is also sold every year, so that volume is also very crucial, I feel, for the full-time writers. Like I see big authors and they are just with books and books, and there could be a lot of work that has gone before, right? I mean, we don't know what happened before they actually got published and what happened. Maybe there's years of work behind that. Like I was reading something about Jojo Moyes. She's like, my first 4 or 5 books just failed. So there's probably a decade of work that has gone behind before that first breakthrough came along. So that's also kind of realistic. But it's very nice that you said that to find a lifestyle around writing and not put the pressure of all of this on your craft. And I read it from many authors who have become very popular also, like they were waiting tables, they're doing all kind of random jobs just to make sure that that pressure is not coming onto on their craft, right? So that's yeah, that's true. Tell us a little bit more about finding this support group, because I think in the age of social media, we of course have a lot of connections online, but it is also very difficult to just find people who would read and give you feedback. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that the area I live, the borough I live in, London, there just happened to be already, they'd existed 2 or 3 years before I joined. There was a writing group for writers who exchange manuscripts and give each other feedback. So when I got to that point, I think after I'd been writing, I think it was about sort of 9 months. So I'd done the first draft and then done several edits. And I thought, yeah, now's the time to try and find another group of writers. So I just was very lucky and I looked in my local area and there it was. There are other writers groups across London. So if that hadn't been the case, I'd had to spread my net a little bit wider. So I think that's a key place to kind of start, is just to look on the internet or meetup.com or different websites which might be about local community, because you never know what interests might be there. You can always try and set one up yourself, because obviously that group, that at some point they had to
Right.
found it. So you can reach out to people maybe on social media. I think social media is really good for forming connections. I think, yeah, Twitter is how it started, but that sort of imploded a bit. So there's not so much engagement on there. I find Instagram now is where I form newer connections. I think it's good to move from there to, yeah, either kind of meeting in real life, whether that could be at writing festivals, for example, you have some locally, or to have some of that offline, not, it's still online, so it's, but not on the platform. So whether that's on WhatsApp or by emailing, to move it from just that commenting on liking people's photos to actually, yeah, sharing, writing and getting feedback.
Yes, very true. So before we kind of end this conversation, this was very valuable and helpful, and I'm hoping people who are listening to this conversation would also get some ideas, would help them take their work forward. So before we end this, I just wanted to get 5 quick recommendation of books that you are currently reading or you have read. It could be crime fiction because that's probably the genre that you are really invested in right now. But it could be any other book as well. Like regarding writing, you have already said. So something around fiction, give us 4, 5 book recommendations. I think that would also be interesting for us to know.
Yeah, yes, it is. There is a lot of crime fiction. I'll try and see if I can squeeze out a non-crime one, because the first ones that come to mind, yeah, are crime, because I do read a lot in the genre. Um, so one I've read recently that I really enjoyed is called No Safe Place. It's by Hannah Brennan. Full disclosure, she is in the in the writing group that I've mentioned, but it's really good. I like it because I like watching police procedurals on TV, but I don't often like reading them. And so, but hers is more like a police thriller. But yes, there's a police of a female police officer investigating a crime, but you also see chapters from the point of views of people who are involved in the crime. So it's more emotional. So I like that. Another author, G.D. Wright. So this is his second book. It's called Into the Fire. So again, it's like a thriller. It's very emotional, really tightly plotted. That again, there is a police officer, but it's more focused on the people involved in the crime and kind of what happened. And a bit similar to Flat 401, there are secrets in the past that, this person's trying to prevent coming out. So I like that as a bit of a theme. I've started, I think you can sort of see it in the background. It's quite a chunky book, so I haven't finished it yet, but it's Basim Khan, who's a British Indian author. his previous books were more like historical, set in India, but his latest one is a psychological thriller as well, set in America. So it's called Girl in Cell A. So that's really interesting. Again, a bias because one of the characters is a psychologist. So I'm always interested in reading reading ones about that. And then it's not fiction, but it's a memoir that I'm reading, but I'm enjoying at the moment. And I think that memoirs can be good for fiction writers to read as well if they're like the characters that you're writing about, because you learn more about people's lives. And it's called The Ayatollah's Gaze. I want to make sure I say the author's name correctly. I can't see where I put it, but Majid Parsa, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So it's about his time growing up as a gay Iranian. But it's the reason I want to flag it is you might expect, time growing up, as gay in Iran, that would be very negative, but actually there's quite a lot of like joy in it as well. So that's kind of been fun to read too, and it just gives it's very different from the the sort of gritty crime that I tend to read. So yeah, those are some things I'm reading.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Kinsley, for joining us. And I wish you all the best. I hope the next book is already in the making. I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm waiting for notes back from my editor, so it is with the publisher, waiting to hear back from them about all the work that to bring it to the shelves. But thank you so much, and Priyanka, and all the best to you and everyone with their writing as well.
Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.